welcome. Happy 5th of July. How's it going, Nick?
Fireworks.
Fireworks?
Mm-hmm.
What did you do yesterday?
I'm still hearing fireworks in my
Did you bring me
ears.
leftovers from your family get-together?
I didn't have a family get-together, but I bought you plenty of leftovers. I had pizza.
Pizza?
Mm-hmm.
Really? So anti-patriotic of you to not celebrate 4th of
Everybody's
July.
on vacation. My whole family ditched me. I'm all alone.
You're abandoned. No one likes you?
Nobody.
I wonder why.
Truth comes out.
Truth comes out. It is a busy summer market, though. We were still writing contracts and getting deals done, despite the fact that we thought we were going to get the day off. Was it busy for you, too? Your lender still getting calls?
I just started ignoring emails yesterday.
You started ignoring. You can't ignore emails.
Oh, I did. You'll all hear from me today, though. I'm back. I'm alive.
You're back?
Yep.
Getting lots of calls about what's happening in the market. And, of course, we work very hard to find you that special property that you've always wanted to own. But today in the studio with us, it's Return of the Mac. You want to introduce?
Return of the Mac.
Return
go
of the
ahead.
Mac.
You already did it, so go ahead.
How's it going, Mr. Correa?
Oh, my God. It's amazing. What a great summer.
Is it?
Oh, it's been awesome.
How's it been for you? How are the kids?
Oh, the kids are terrific. We were at Lake Geneva over the weekend.
Nice.
Oh, my God. It's good to have good friends.
Everybody goes there except for me. No one's ever invited me to Lake Geneva.
No one likes
Nick, we didn't know you were home alone. We would have brought you along with us.
Home alone, just like Macaulay Culkin in the movie.
You could even ridden shotgun.
I can only imagine the kind of trouble he gets in when he's alone. But Mario, the boys, how are they? Hockey, baseball, what are we doing this
Oh
summer?
my God, we're doing a bunch of stuff. Although I'm there's this thing called summer loss where we make them do homework. What happens is kids.
Do you hear that? That's crazy, right?
We make they're like in rebellion.
Okay.
They're like in stand-up
so
rebellion.
you're making your kids do homework in the summer.
Like 20 minutes of reading and
That's
20
what
minutes
happens
of
when your
math.
dad's an attorney.
And then the rest of the other 14 hours a day is like complete free time.
You are an
They
evil
spent-
human being.
I'm an evil human being.
You are an evil human being.
I was talking about day camp, I don't know, trips. I heard you guys were at Six Flags. Come on.
Oh yeah, no, we were at camp. Every time we were
Homework
in
during
camp,
summer vacation. You're just an evil human. I should just leave the show right now. You're just an evil human being.
we're gonna be doing hockey camp. We've gotten them on other camps, but every time I put them in a camp, they have like. They hate it. They have attention deficit disorder or something. I mean,
They want to be home.
they want to be home. They want to be on their iPads. and
It's
their
so much more
electronics.
fun at home, of course. Great family man, Mario. It's a pleasure to have you back in the studio.
Hey, great to be back.
We wanted to share with our audience how to protect their assets. What is the best way to do it? And it's a great, quiet 5th of July day. Everybody's back. No one wants to be back in the office because they're still, tired from yesterday.
Yeah, but it's a great time to start thinking about it because when you're thinking about investment, when things are going hot in the market, you want to make sure that you protect those resources that you're putting together. You know what I'm saying? You want to make sure that your hard work stays protected so you can keep on enjoying life.
For sure. And I think that most of our clients don't start to think about that until we get to the closing table and they start asking, how are we going to hold this asset? How are we going to protect it? Of course, your home sometimes is one of the biggest assets that you own. So why don't we start there, Mario? Tell us, how do we protect our,
our
real
assets.
estate?
Assets. Sorry.
Well, first off, the way you own it's a big deal, and one of the big issues I see, especially for married couples, and I see this. What I do is I get to look behind the hood, and I say about 20% of the time what I'm finding out is the home ownership is not protected when they're a married couple. It's not protected in a special way. I'm going to talk about that special way. All right.
Okay.
There's 3 ways for a married couple to own property. Okay. The first one is tenants in common.
Okay. Ooh, we're
Which-
getting some real estate 101 here. Tenants in common.
Yeah, so joint tenancy is the second. The only difference between joint tenancy and tenants in common is tenants in common just means it's like a stock certificate or something. It's just when I die, it goes pursuant to my will, doesn't go to my spouse or whoever I own it with necessarily. Okay. Joint tenancy is almost like a joint bank account. Either one of us dies, the other one gets it all. That's joint tenancy.
Ooh.
The cool thing, though, and the big mistake that I see, and I see this around 20% of the time, and for those out there, maybe you're not making that mistake, but you got to make sure your parents are owning their property the right way, too. Because I do see this quite frequently, is they don't own it in what's called tenancy by the entirety. Now, I'm going to tell you the benefit of that. Tenancy by the entirety is when it is asset protected, meaning that if one spouse has an accident, if one spouse gets sued, if one spouse commits fraud, if one spouse does something wrong, they don't touch the asset of the other spouse. What does that mean in practical English? It means one spouse can go bankrupt and the other spouse keeps the house. That's what that means.
So what would you recommend for a young couple that is newlywed and they're just buying their first home? Obviously the wife is really excited. The husband's really excited. We do not talk about prenup agreements or anything like that. But we both want to be on that mortgage.
We both want to be on that mortgage. We're going to do tenancy by the entirety. And where their risk factors are going to come along in the future is what's going to happen is they're going to refinance that property. And they're going to sit with a broker. And sometimes that broker is going to tell them, listen, your score is, the wife's scores, credit score is terrific and the husband's is mediocre.
It happens all the time.
It happens all the time, right, Nick?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll put the house in one of their names.
Right.
Primary. So what do when they put the house in one of their names? They're taking it out of tenancy by the entirety, and they're putting the house in one of their names. What's happened to our protection that Illinois law grants us? We lost that protection. Now, I know Nick, because Nick and I have talked about this offline, and he looks after his clients, so he'll make sure they put it back in tenancy by the entirety. But I know a lot of mortgage brokers who don't follow through like that.
Yeah, I try to suggest never putting both people on the actual mortgage note unless it's absolutely necessary.
That's a really smart reason for some.
Why do you recommend
Which is
that?
totally a different reason from above and beyond title and entity, but liability is liability. I have to look at the liability first and foremost. And if you don't both need to qualify the loan,
right,
you just want to always protect one in case there's something that happens. I mean, look, the crash happened. We protected a lot of husbands or wives by not having them on the mortgage for just unnecessary purposes.
Right, I love that.
So now we're talking about two things.
It's a whole different
You're
thing.
protecting
The mortgage is one thing,
Yeah.
and the debt and the liability is one thing, and then title and title is, in my opinion, title means more than the debt.
Right. It's actually, and you could actually marry the two ideas we're tossing about now. Nick is talking about liability under a note, and I'm talking about asset ownership. There's actually a law that says there's a due on sale. I don't want to get too sophisticated with this due on sale clause conversation, but you can do your loan with Nick, get it on one spouse, come to my office, and then we'll put it in tenancy by the entirety after the loan, and that will not trigger the due on sale clause for Nick.
Right.
So you get the best of both worlds. You've got the house that is the note that's only exposed to one spouse.
Correct.
So now you're
The
all
note,
set
you mean
there.
the mortgage as well, right?
And now you come to my office, and now you have it in tenancy by the entirety, which is protected against the liability of both spouses.
Wow, I
So
thought
how
it
do
was
you
going to
handle
be a
this
chill
when
day. We're now getting
you
deep
have
into
and typically what happens
title.
you go back to the standard mortgage lender, you refinance the house. It's one thing you can call someone like yourself and prepare yourself on how to buy the house.
Right.
But it's another thing when you do, you don't need your attorney to do a refinance.
No.
So, people just, like you said, they call their mortgage lender, they refinance it for whatever reason, rates got better, cash out is required, whatever it might be. How should they be going in and telling at least the mortgage, the loan officer, how to prepare this? Because most loan officers are going to say, okay, are they married? They're tenants in common, or, and they're going to list both the husband and the wife on the 1003 just in the title section,
Right.
but they won't put the one of the people on the loan as a liability. No social security number, no qualification ratios. They're just there because they're identifying the spouse.
Right.
And they're right there on page one of the application, right, as who that other person of interest would be. That's not being done correctly, is what you're saying though.
Well, yeah,
because the title company just take it and say, okay, well, Illinois state law,
they're
automatically. Okay.
They're all correct.
It's just a matter of how much you want to protect the other
Y-
spouse
yeah.
and how much
Because Nick,
freedom you want to have over the property, correct?
right? And what in my and Nick, you're gonna have more experience than I am on the mortgage side of this. But in my experience because by the way, what mortgage companies want can be different. I mean, that's what the law requires, which is a lot more expansive than what mortgage companies are doing for business purposes. But what I've seen historically is that the mortgage companies want the loans to match the title to match the owner. So, and maybe the people you operate with, Nick, are different and are a little bit more flexible. But what I've seen is that if they're going to put one person on the loan, they're going to want title to be in that one person's name. They're not going to want to see joint owners.
If they're married, they're going to want the wife. The title company is going to be pushing for the wife to be on title as well.
Okay, they're going to be not to waive title because they'll want her to waive. They'll want her to waive.
You can waive it if
waive homeowners exemption.
Right. But most title companies will just traditionally put them both on the title.
Okay, that's the best of both worlds then.
Right.
If they'll put you both on title in tenancy by the entirety and let you do the loan with one spouse, that's the best of both worlds. That's what we're talking about.
I think everybody feels comfortable doing that, but I like the fact. Let's go back a little bit between what you said about tenancy in the entirety and joint tenancy.
Right.
You always recommend that we do entirety, correct?
Right.
And that's because if I were to pass, then my property goes to my spouse, 100% of it.
Right.
Versus it going to probate and having to be figured out as to how the will is going to be executed.
Right. Well, the thing what people don't realize is, first off, joint tenancy and tenancy by the entirety, the big difference there is what you see in bankruptcy court. In joint tenancy, if a house is owned in joint tenancy, a creditor can sever the property and force the property to be sold. Joint tenancy is only transferring upon death. Tenancy by the entirety has this lifetime protection that you cannot sever the marital property. It's a special asset. It's only available for married couples, and it's actually the public policy position behind it is to protect the marriage.
So you're saying if someone's spouse gets drunk one night, runs somebody over,
That's right.
they've got a slew of problems.
Right.
But because it's in tenants in the entirety,
Right.
the spouse that was just sleeping at home that night isn't jeopardized of losing their home.
We're correct. Absolutely.
So that's why we're recommending that's the best way to hold it, especially because, as you mentioned, Nick, the mortgage and the title are two different things. And from a lender perspective, you guys are okay with just letting one of the spouses be on the mortgage, specifically because not just tragic stories like you like to take it to the next level.
Tragedy
but
is
the
like where this stuff really comes up.
One spouse loses their job, and then they go into financial hardship, and one of them has to claim bankruptcy, right?
Right.
Then they have to deal with the asset, which is the one asset that they have, which is the house. Maybe they have credit cards or doctor bills, and they're going to have to file bankruptcy. Then the house is protected, so the children and the husband and the wife, they all have their home, and all they have to deal with is the bankruptcy on the other stuff. Correct?
It's huge. That's correct, and that's huge. And where the blind spot comes, I mean, everyone would agree that this is huge, but what I've noticed in my practice is, when does this mess up? Like you have a lawyer, you put it in tenancy by the entirety, and then what I've seen it mess up, Nick, I'm glad I know you're on top of this issue. But I know that not every mortgage lender is the same, right? Like not every lawyer is the same, not like every realtor is the same.
Some people just want to get the transaction done.
There's hacks everywhere, man. There's hacks everywhere.
So what I see in those situations is they come to me and they didn't even know that they had this blind spot, this glaring error in their title. And I would ask, why are you owning it? And you see the chain of title, and you see it transferring to one person's name. And then you see it stay there.
Like a quick claim deed, per se?
A quick claim. Yeah, they'll quick claim it. Like, they'll go to these less than reputable title companies, or with these, they're just going for the cheapest rate every time without considering other factors.
Right.
And then I see title get messed up, and I see it in one spouse. Like, it's no big deal. Well, they'll get it. It's in my will. But you're not thinking this thing through. You're not getting the special protection that's free. It doesn't really cost anything other than a quick claim deed.
Right.
So let's just say you're a couple. You went and you did your refinance because you went after the lowest rate, and the loan officer there wasn't very experienced, and he just somehow this all slipped through the cracks. Is this something that can be undone by visiting you, and you can restructure it all?
Absolutely.
I think that's what people want to know. Like, how do I know if I had it done right or not right now? And can they go to somebody and have it done after the fact?
Yeah, and that's the really terrific thing about there's a federal law that it won't even trigger the due on sale clause. So you're allowed to put your spouse in title. And what the due on sale clause is for people that don't know, is what you're not allowed to do, and Nick can speak more on this topic than I can, but what you're not allowed to do is go ahead and transfer your property to somebody else and sell it basically in an installment note without
because
paying off your mortgage.
The mortgage has stuff in there basically that they need to know about anything. That's
transfer of the
title.
title.
Transfer of title, and they need to be notified.
The lender is part owner of that property. They're investor, silent investor.
That's why
not occupying the property. But
mortgage for deed installment loans are typically not very popular unless the property is paid off, because there's usually clauses in the existing mortgage that would prevent those from traditionally happening.
Right, and while those clauses are still there, and in theory, transfer to your spouse would trigger those clauses, there's a federal law that overrides those clauses. Says you're allowed to transfer to your spouse, and as long as they won't trigger the due on sale clause. So the federal law trumps, overrides those clauses in the mortgage.
Cool. Lots of information this morning. Mario, another question for you. I know that a lot of people are now really interested in purchasing multi-units because they want to subsidize, get some income and also be able to subsidize that mortgage payment. When it comes to litigation, how do you protect yourself when you're holding this type of investment property?
Well, asset protection's huge. I'm glad you bring that up. I mean, asset protection's huge. And there's basically what you do with asset protection, how do you preserve your estate once you start building a little bit of wealth, is you put up different walls. You know, it's almost, think of it like a war, or like something like where you're putting up walls or defenses to protect your family.
Talking about walls now.
All right. That's the first protection is always insurance. I don't sell insurance.
You know, you're like a corporate shield, or like a shield.
Like a shield.
I don't like walls.
Or shield, like a shield. Think of it like shields or defenses. All right.
Okay.
When an attorney, when you're being attacked, what defenses do you put in place to protect yourself? Well, the most common, and I don't sell insurance. You know what I'm saying? I'm an estate and trust attorney. I do not sell insurance, and I don't be able to get insurance. When a family comes to me and they
But I'm just saying, going back to that example that you had mentioned earlier about, you know, protecting your assets. So if a tenant falls and tries to sue me, you know, what do I have?
Let's talk about those. Let's talk about those forms of protection.
Right.
The first form of protection we start with is insurance. The other form of protection that we want in addition to our insurance is we want to control the ownership of the property. The ownership of the property, liability flows differently depending on how an asset is owned. All right. If I own an asset and somebody's injured on that property, I'm exposed 100%.
Right.
And this is why you typically see builders, for the most part, are always incorporating before they buy the property.
Right.
They're never buying under their own name. They're buying under their 99% of the time it's the address of the property. It's their alter ego. They're like, oh, that's 1234 West State Street.
Right.
LLC.
But you're talking about developers, right? Because these are two different mentalities.
They're the most common to do it.
Right. Well,
Right.
but now most recently, everybody's buying two flats. It's like the best thing to do, right?
Right.
But these buyers are buying it as if because they're going to own or occupy it.
Okay.
They're buying it just, and holding it the way they would hold a residential property, not realizing that this has become an investment, and also it's a company now because they have clients who are tenants.
And we're going to have to do this again, by the way, because most lenders are not letting them buy as an LLC because a lot of them find it to be complicated.
Really?
Yeah, that's true.
So you have to have your name on the...
Most lenders want them to just do the loan traditionally,
right,
and then go deal with whatever you want to deal with after that.
Right.
They don't really want to lend to your new LLC. They want to lend to you.
And this is the issue. And what happens is you go through a life cycle. So I see people in a life cycle. The life cycle normally starts with a young family buying that 2-flat, 3-flat, makes it investment property. Someone who's normally like organized like that, and their sales are, they're accumulating asset, they're in an accumulation phase of their life. Then they'll buy that second piece of property and that third. And then by the time, a lot of times when I get them, they've reached that age where they have these properties. A lot of them are paid off or mostly paid off, and then they start dropping them into LLCs, which is then you start seeing the developer. So why do we
have to wait that long? I mean, when would you advise me if I were to buy for the first time and I am buying a multi-unit? When would you advise me to go after I've closed with NIC or gotten my mortgage to go ahead and figure out how I'm going to hold title?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at your asset profile. I'm going to look at your exposure. Okay. If this is the only asset you have, then, what am I,
Her assets are always exposed.
So,
for the record.
So we'll do a cost-benefit analysis. Right. So if you have a lot of exposure or assets that can be attacked outside of this asset, for example, let's say you have money in a bank account, or you have it in the stock market, or you have it somplease else.
Lots of it, Mario. Come on now.
And then what I'm going to do? Then I'm going to recommend an LLC. Because at least first I'm going to recommend insurance, because you should better have property insurance.
Well, our
and
lender's
then
not going to let us
require.
do anything without insurance.
Right.
You're going to already have hazards insurance.
Then we're going to create an LLC for you. And then in that LLC, the LLC will own the property. So just so people understand.
So the LLC is better than the S Corp?
Yeah, and we can talk about that a million times. It is a mistake to put property in an S Corp. Straight up mistake. Yeah. Straight up mess up.
True.
I'll give you the reason.
Costly, isn't it?
So you can be sophisticated when you talk to your clients out there, when you talk to your friends.
I like that.
I'll tell you why. But let's just start with the rule. It's a mistake. Repeat after me. A mistake to put it in your S Corp.
Mario's coming here telling us our kids got to go to school this summer.
Outside of liability, we'll go from an underwriting perspective, because I just had a relative doing a loan, and it was funny because they almost did it right, so to speak. When you're lending and there's LLCs, we look at you as a self-employed borrower. We don't look at you as a quote-unquote property owner, because the LLCs now, if they're done correctly, and the taxes and the revenues and the liabilities are all deducted from the LLC correctly, we will just take a plus or a minus and use that against your debt-to-income ratio. However, if you just have it titled under an LLC, but then you're forwarding all of it to your personal liability directly, meaning on your Schedule Cs it has the address of the property and it has, you know, the taxes that are a deduction to you personally and the insurance and all this stuff. Now we have to get into the whole debt to income ratio where we want all the information on the property. I want to know the tax bill on the property. I want to know the mortgage liability. I want to know everything about it, right? But if it's truly done the correct way, and it sounds like the way you're actually saying it, and the complete corporation is taking the accountability of revenues and liabilities, it becomes much easier for us as mortgage lenders to underwrite you without having to have like 10 different properties against your real estate owned schedule.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're
because
doing.
those are just corporations. So like, let's just say a known entrepreneur walks in and he's like, well, I own 10 businesses. None of them happen to be real estate. We would ask him for all 10 businesses' tax returns, and then also his personal, and come up with an equation of income. Well, that's how we would treat those properties if they were done, as you're saying, correctly. But when you do them all mucky, and you have just your name on this one and you and your buddy's name on the other one, and all that comes down on you in a liability perspective, which sometimes actually kills your loan as well. So it's not just protecting yourself from, you know, hazard, if you will, or life events. It's also protecting yourself from buying the next one too.
So the way you structure these, and it's funny, I'm hearing you, Nick, and what I'm hearing is the way you structure these is really going to impact your loan. I never see I try to be holistic, you know, but sometimes you don't see that side of the equation. You know, you do things correctly, right? You create your LLC. Your LLC is now the owner. So what does the law say? The law says that you can only, if something happens to you, you can only sue the LLC. So it basically becomes a bubble in which liability sits. So in your example, Karla, with the 2-flat, you put it in an LLC, then it sits within that LLC bubble. So now if you have this car, you have this bank account, you have these securities, you have this other property outside of that bubble, then when somebody has that fire, that outrageous event, or that life incident happens, and the insurance just wasn't quite enough, or just as common is the insurance company doesn't want to pay out, so it starts fighting you on whether technically you were within the parameters of the insurance or not. But then you're within that, but at least your liability is encapsulated within that bubble, and you're not exposing those other assets.
Let's take this a little deeper though, because now you're truly protecting yourself by forming a corporation, an LLC, that is going to be completely accountable for this other property. And therefore, you know that you're truly isolated. Some people will look at that. Now, let's say it's a property that's got a nice little income stream. And it makes you $10,000 a year in net profit when it's all said and done. So your corporation's earning $10,000 a year. That means it has money for quote-unquote profit, or there is profit there. So now I'm only speaking from some weird experience here, because I'm one of those people that have sued and been sued. You know, when you're coming from the stuff that I've had to deal with over the years, you'll get people suing you because you looked at them the wrong way walking the street.
Trust me, I know.
But do you need to be careful about how you're using those funds? Because isn't there an issue where if there is a commingling, piercing the corporate veil, if you're just paying for your kids' t-ball lessons out of the LLC, does it make you exposed now? That someone could still sue you if someone died on your property?
Yes, it does.
Because you've commingled. They could pierce the corporate veil.
Piercing the corporate veil. Although piercing the corporate veil is tough. But
it's doable.
It's doable. I think you always argue it. This is a funny thing.
They try to pierce it on me. That's why I'm saying it.
It's brutal. It's doable. But as long as you keep a bank account, we always tell you keep a bank account in the name of the LLC.
Absolutely.
You keep a bank account in the name of the LLC, and then you use that bank account for the operations of whatever.
But then you should be taking your profits as clean distribution against your 401, against your K1, and that's it. You can't be using that property as your personalized piggy bank to paint your house that you live in, or to make, like I said, a T-ball lesson or a tuition payment straight from that account. Now it's commingling. Now it's pierceable.
But it's pierceable. Now let's talk about what pierceable. They look at multiple factors. I've looked into this area of law too about piercing, and you don't want to be close to the gray line, right? I mean, there's a gray area, and you certainly don't want to. But I'll tell you, the gray area.
You're doing all this to be away from any line.
Right. So do it right.
This is what people need to truly know, is that you can really get screwed. I literally, because
So what happens if you
corporation,
pierce it and you do that?
if you pierce it, they can say that you are one and the same with the corporation.
lost
You're
the
no longer.
protection.
You
So
have
you
no
don't have the
protection.
protection.
You lost the
anymore.
protect.
Well, that's
The
crazy.
bubble popped.
Just
Remember,
because of bad accounting?
your bubble popped. It's not because the bubble basically popped and then you're exposed. You put a bubble around your liability and you encapsulated it, and basically you pop that bubble and now you expose all your other assets with bad habits of not treating it like a separate entity.
I had an overzealous scumbag ambulance chasing attorney back in the day try to sue me and my company because he said that we were one and the same, alter ego.
Right,
It was the
right,
same
of
place.
course.
Nick Memeti is XYZ Mortgage
Right.
Company, and that's it.
Right.
And so I found this to be hilarious.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And then when you go through discovery, he was trying to find that one thing where I used it as my personal piggy bank.
Right.
Luckily, there wasn't.
Right.
There was something that was arguably could have been, but it wasn't. It was truly for
Everything's
work
arguable.
purposes.
And anything-
Right, but I just this is when I learned
Yeah.
what piercing the corporate veil is, and we're
Yeah.
over here talking about corporations and properties and this and that. And I'm like,
No, he's
what
right.
do you mean you could pierce a corporate veil?
Yeah.
And they're like, if you were using it in a
Yeah.
commingling fashion,
Yeah.
that LLC really doesn't mean diddly
Yeah.
squat.
Yeah. I mean, and they all look at other They look at other factors.
Wow,
too.
you've actually added to something amazing today. I'm so glad
I'm
you
getting
didn't stay home
validation
today.
from him. I'm
Yeah.
really not.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not
No,
100%
you're right.
accurate. I'm just saying what I've seen happen.
He's
But
right.
see, this is another reason why it's so important for us to understand how to hold our properties, how to
Right.
protect our assets. And
No,
that's why this
absolutely.
show is awesome for us to be here, elevate your real estate IQ. Someone as smart and intelligent and knowledgeable as Nick Memeti can also make mistakes. Just kidding. That was way too much, and I was just kidding on that. But Mario, seriously,
Well, what are the best ways?
yeah, what are the best ways to do it? Because we still didn't go back to like what is the difference between an LLC and an S corp?
All right. So we said
One's
the
more
rule.
expensive, and here's the
Can
trick.
you stop
But
and let the
here's the
attorney
trick.
talk?
Here's the trick. Here's the trick. Most people defer to S corp because it's just cheaper.
And now he wants to be an attorney.
It's the sad part.
Most people defer to
I
S
know
corp.
that that's the answer, but he's the attorney.
The huge one is at death. The huge differential. Now, if you're going to take property and sell it while you're alive, then the S corp is fine.
Life happens, it's death.
But if
it's
you're
litigation, it's
as you
divorce.
get older and as you're owning more and more property, what's going to happen is you're going to have a depreciation life on a piece of real estate over 29.5 years, 30 years basically. You're going to depreciate that property. There is something called a step up in basis.
Those are
at
accounting
death.
terms for taxes.
Step
I
up in
like that.
basis is huge. What that means is in order to understand, let me give you a simple example for you to understand the concept, because for me to try to explain it using words is going to be overwhelming. When you buy a property, let's say for $20, just to use small numbers, $20, and sell it for $50, what's your profit?
30.
30. Okay, so that $20, what you bought it for, in essence, that's your basis. Now, let's say you take a dollar deduction every year from that $20 for depreciation. Depreciation's awesome. It's just a deduction. You take that depreciation, you take it for 5 years. So you take that 20 and you depreciate it for year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. You start for 20. You subtract 5. Where do we end up?
25.
We end up from 20, subtract
from
5.
15.
15.
Sorry.
15. We sell it for 50. What's our profit? 35.
Because
right?
of the 30.
Because the
30
30 of
that
the
you
original. So
appreciated.
our
Yeah,
basis
plus-
dropped.
Okay.
This is the rub. If I fully depreciate a property, I sell it for 50. The day before I die, I have $50 of profit. It's all profit. I depreciate it all at zero, $50 of profit. If I sell it the day after I die, zero profit, zero tax. Why? Because the tax code says the date of death value, whatever the property is worth on the day I die, is my new basis. So it basically revitalizes my basis to date of death value. Shoots everything back like a rocket back up. Huge deduction. Huge implications for somebody older. Huge tax implications.
So let's talk about this. Say, my family, my father is per se dying, right? Deathbed.
Right.
And we have this property, and we have we have a portfolio of properties we want to get rid of.
Right.
Are you advising then that we liquidate those assets post death, or
You post-death.
okay?
Post-death. And unfortunately, people try to do workaround so they don't have to pay. So what they'll do is, especially people in real estate, so to the realtors out there, one of the quick fixes they might be inclined to do is say, hey, let's just put it in joint tenancy. We'll avoid probate. We'll put it in joint tenancy. And that's a huge mistake.
Or try to do a quick claim deed and get that
Right.
person out of the title and
Quick claim deed.
quick claim the deed outside before father, right? In this example, before father dies.
And don't
that's a
be
no?
quick claiming at death without talking to an expert.
Well,
That's
of course,
the takeaway.
it's
Because
under
here,
distress, right? Or duress.
here they really messed up, because here they took a property that was about to get a step up in basis post death, And I see this too frequently,
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking about tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars of loss by having it the wrong way. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, family losing wealth in the scale of tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Just because of the way
Just because of the way
they wrap things up or
they tried
transact
to do a quick fix. They tried to quick claim it. They tried to get around probate. They tried to do a quick fix, and they did it wrong. They just did it wrong.
And then we're talking about like the extremes, right? We're talking about somebody's deathbed. We're talking about litigation. But what about when, say, our baby boomers are selling in the suburbs to move to the city because there's downsizing? How do you protect your asset at that time? Do you think that it's advisable at this point to start giving the property away to their descendants, or how would you? No.
You could, but one of the best ways to give property away. First of all, I'm never a big fan of somebody giving away their assets unless there's a very powerful tax reason to do it.
Unless, of course, they're really good friends and they want to be nice and give them a gift for their birthday or something.
We are not friends. There is no gifts, so don't roll your eyes and look at me.
But
I was talking about Mario.
Oh, okay.
We're friends, Karla. We're not that good of friends.
She's always asking for something for free from me, so I just want to get that out of the way.
I was talking about Mario.
Well, you were looking at me like I'm supposed to donate a condo
Like
to
I was
you.
asking you to just go ahead and solidify.
Yeah.
You know what I was talking about.
One of the biggest things actually people don't know about, and I was talking about this at a program I did for the Federal Reserve, is
What?
Illinois has a very special statute that says that you are allowed to do what's called spendthrift trusts. I'm going to talk about that very.
Spendthrift trust.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a mouthful,
Okay.
and it's a simple concept. Okay, gift is about trusts are just a way. Trusts are instructions you could put on property. You could hold something in trust. All it is saying that you're holding it with special instructions. You're allowed to give a gift to somebody and say, okay, I'm going to give my kids or my grandkids this property. Okay, and you can say it's only to be used for, and then fill in the blank, for educational purposes. I'm going to give them this money. They can only use it for education. Or I'm going to give you this money. They can only use it to travel. Whatever you want, whatever restrictions you want. Completely valid and enforceable. You could, in fact, go as far as saying, I am giving this property to my children with the one restriction that it cannot be used for creditors and it cannot be used in the event of a divorce.
So you can actually specify what it's
Not to be used for. Now, think about the implications of that as
what
a
if you have one
owner.
of the bad kids that decides that they're gonna spend the money?
Well, think about this, Nick. Nick talked about these lawsuits for piercing the corporate veil, and I have business owners that have faced these issues. And when you're and the more sophisticated you get, the bigger you are.
Course,
I hate to say it. I mean, this is my client. I deal with big people with big lives.
They come after you.
They come after you. You're a big
very
fish.
creatively.
You're a big fish, and they're gonna come after you.
Nobody sues a small fish.
No one cares.
Nobody cares.
No one cares.
That's just how I learned. I was always a medium fish.
Even the medium fish get
I
attacked.
was just a little fishy.
Oh my God, it's Valentine's Day today.
So what they do is when they attack the big fish are exposed. What happens is it would be so much better to have that asset. Say, I mean, Nick, you'll be present to this. Wouldn't it feel great to have a couple $100,000 that you might otherwise own in your individual name held in trust where no one can touch it, even in the event of a divorce?
Or find it.
It's
It's really hard to find those.
Right.
Like, it's just a trust number, so how do you know whose it is?
But it's not even the land trust. It is literally, you can disclose it to the lawyer. Here is that personal injury attorney that was really coming after you.
Mm-hmm.
You can say, here is my parents' instructions. Here's the money they gave me. Here are the accounts.
Right.
Here are the account numbers. And here are the instructions.
And you can't do anything about it.
And the instructions clearly say that I cannot pay your credit. Sorry, I'd love to pay you, creditor.
Right.
I'd love to pay you for this lawsuit, this frivolous lawsuit you're filing against me.
Right.
But I can't use my assets. Because they're really not mine. They were my parents, and they put a restriction on it.
But that's just it. I mean, that lazy hack. Look, there's ambulance chasers out there. So if you are somebody that has something or some kind of a local status and people think you have a lot of money, they don't usually want to pick up and sue somebody that doesn't have anything because they're not making any money.
Right.
So, the easiest thing for any attorney to do is to look at a LexisNexis report. I think it's what those things are called. And find out what you have as far as your cars, boats, houses, bank accounts, anything under your personal name.
Right.
So when you're walking around with plenty of things under your personal name, it's just, you're an open target. Now, there's ways to do it.
There's ways to do it where you have those assets. You have those assets. You still have access to them. You still control them. You can still draw them when you want.
Oh, yeah.
But they're not in your name anymore. So they're not accessible by those creditors.
I like the way this guy thinks.
So you're the boss of the account. You're the boss of the trust. I mean, you're pulling out as you need it. And these are specifically made for your personal living expenses. So that piercing the corporate veil that exists in the corporate world does not exist in the trust world when these are prepared.
Right.
So, gentlemen, you are talking about like ambulance chasers, people that are out there to come and get your money.
We're
But
talking
what
about-
about the
There's
people
different
that you
people-
allowed into your home and you share a life with?
Yeah,
you
those
actually share
divorce.
vows with them and you promise them forever and ever after. But then
Get it?
something happens and there is no forever after, and there goes that divorce litigation.
I get it.
So you were talking about, family. You were heired this amount of money or these properties.
Right.
Can your spouse go after your assets in that case?
Your spouse, inherited property is not considered marital property.
Okay.
Right. But what happens is it's another level of protection when it's in trust,
Even if they didn't sign a prenup, though.
even if they didn't sign a prenup. So this is why it's so important when you gift assets,
Mm-hmm.
you put it in trust for your kids, because you want to make sure that those assets are protected. Now, what happens is they can go after premarital assets for a few things. Let's say you don't pay your support or your maintenance like you're supposed to. You can go after all assets. They don't care if it's marital or non-marital. Attorney fees. They can go after all assets. They don't care if it's marital or non-marital.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, so you can go after those assets, but if you have it in trust, you cannot even go after those assets because they're not yours technically. They are owned by the trust.
Right. Love it. And that's why you have to protect your assets. You have to know what you're doing when you purchase these properties, or, of course, work with an estate attorney,
Right.
and trust attorney that's going to help you navigate through this.
And I want to make a distinction because people get confused in the real estate world between the difference between a land trust
Uh-huh.
and the type of trust I'm talking about, a living trust. All a land trust means is there's a code section in our statute that says banks can use a trust number, and it helps keeps the identity of an owner confidential, okay, because you just have a trust number. But it doesn't have all these additional protections that I'm talking about. All that is a way of holding title. What I'm talking about is more like a corporation, but for individuals.
Right. There's a difference between excuse me. There's a difference between hiding, quote unquote, and being protected in plain sight. Essentially,
Right.
you're saying what you're able to truly do is you don't even have to hide it.
Right.
You're still protected regardless.
Yeah, you're
Some people
protected.
are so focused on just
Hiding.
not being known,
Right.
which isn't a bad thing.
It's
But
kinda
I
the
would,
same thing.
if you, my opinion, do both.
Do
Right.
both.
I
Try to be
well,
hidden
where you're
and
doing it,
protect it
you're
if
protecting
it does
yourself.
come up.
Yeah.
You know.
You're listening to Market Overdrive. We're here every Wednesday at 10 a.m. at WGN Studios. We're here to elevate your real estate IQ. Lots of information about real estate, what's transacting, what's going on in the market. You could always find our information at YouTube and or email us at info@marketoverdrive.com. We do have some questions for our Facebook users because we are streaming live from both we're YouTube and Facebook Live. We have a viewer that's saying, my home is valued over $550. My husband is the only one on the loan. My name is in the title. That's what you recommend?
If your name is both on title, yes. Just make sure when your name's on title, it's in tenancy by the entirety.
Tenancy by the entirety is what
It's the
you
language.
recommend.
You have to look at the deed for that language. It'll say not as joint, your husband and your name, not as joint tenants, but in tenancy by the entirety.
Love it. The other question is, have insurance. What else can I do to protect our home?
With a residence is like what we're talking about, and I have to know whether they're married or not. And maybe insurance is the only thing you can do if you own it individually. I mean, it just depends. I don't want to mislead somebody. If it's just a regular home, I'm not going to tell you to put it in an LLC if that's the only asset. You don't have anybody else living there. You're not going to sue yourself. Just get good homeowners insurance and an umbrella policy. Your issues now, you might have other issues, like if you have young children, maybe you should have some guardians set up for those kids in case something happens to you. But the house isn't the exposure. It's the exposure of you being gone.
Right. And a lot of people, and this is kind of watering it down a little bit, but they confuse the mortgage insurance with the hazards insurance. There's just,
And
the
life
mortgage
insurance
insurance
is
is
the other
just to
thing.
protect the lender in case you default on the mortgage. Obviously, hazards, if you have, if you close at 10 a.m., if there's a fire in that property at 10:30, that property is now your problem, and therefore you have to go and file it with your hazards insurance. But
Right.
today we're talking about how to protect title in case of a lawsuit, or if you get yourself in a financial hardship. We do. Not that we're recommending that only one spouse be on the mortgage, because you obviously have to be responsible, but it's the best way in case, you do hit some financial hardship and then ended up having to
I prefer
file
it.
bankruptcy. I mean,
Right.
we were recommending that back in 2010, 2011,
Oh, there's a lot of families
2012.
I saved from
Right.
that whole because they just wanted to be on the house because they felt like they were equally owning it. But I'm like,
And you
no,
equally
you
own it through
equally
title.
own the debt. Is
Yeah,
all you're
equally,
owning on the
right.
mortgage. I mean, I'm the one here that should be worried about how many people we can go after in event of a foreclosure. And I'm telling you that it's just unnecessary.
And
Yeah,
more
you're
importantly,
speaking
you know,
against
like
interest.
the spouse is able to say, okay, fine, we filed bankruptcy, we lost that property in foreclosure, or unfortunately, or maybe, you know, short sale, unfortunately foreclosure, but the other spouse can then qualify for something, and, you know, you're not homeless or renting.
Yeah, and that's huge. I mean, to the extent, listen, every lender except for Nick, because Nick really does look out for his clients, but every lender, most lenders, I
Did
shouldn't
he
say every.
pay you? Did you?
No, I mean we're
I'll give you that
we
20.
talked-
I'll give you that 20 after the show.
Yeah, that's
Mario.
right. You're gonna
Kidding
owe me
today?
big.
It's your birthday? Can't
But-
be.
No. I mean, they're always looking to put the most people on the loan as possible
Right.
because it just mitigates risk.
Right.
You know, I'd much rather have two people to sue than one person to sue because life happens, man.
Right.
People, accidents happen. It might not be the fault of the person. You lose your job, it's not your fault. I mean, you know, you could have lost your job because of a down economy.
Right.
My advice to anybody listening to the show or watching or whatever the case is, or just poking around trying to get information. I know a lot about this stuff. I'm nowhere near as versed as Mario, obviously, but I'm probably more astute than the average person.
I get that.
And I still get confused listening to you talk at times. Not because you're not explaining it well, going, "Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know this."
It's
you know,
attorney
so
lingo.
there at some point you just need to cough it up and go see somebody because it's the safest way to really do it. Because there's things that, you know, we've done this show, by the way, more than once over the last 3 years.
Right.
You've been on the show
That's
ample
why I
amount
say
of
return
times,
to the Mac.
and I still leave going, "I didn't know that. I didn't know that." After every show, I'm like,
Right.
"Oh, okay." So
Me too, Nick.
to
man.
those that think they're that smart, just get off your ass and go hire a true estate attorney that knows what he's talking about, because you're never going to really have all the answers unless you are one.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we wake up like in all our specializations, and
Right.
the thing is, we talk about is my job as an estate and trust attorney is to point out your blind spots.
Right.
So what me and my team sit down and think about every day is, you know, what, and by the way, we learn a lot from our clients. You know, we see the different exposures, and we read about this and we think about this, how are families really attacked with risk?
Right.
You know, how can we use the laws to mitigate that risk? And, you know, you're thinking, how do I get somebody maybe qualified? How do I get somebody's
Right.
dreams to be actualized?
Right.
How do I make that homeowner's dream happen? And you're thinking about, like, from that lens.
Oh, yeah. I had to worry about my job later, which
Right.
is, you know, my job is to get you approved more
Right.
than anything.
Right.
And if I don't do that, then I'm failing my job. So,
Right.
you know, when we hit the LLC topic, I'm like, it's crazy to me because people,
Right.
and it goes to show you that people are trying to do the right thing,
Yeah.
but they don't follow it through all the way. It's still
Right.
left, from my standpoint, it left exposure on the mortgage qualification. It wasn't done
Right.
correctly by that CPA.
Right.
Maybe it was said to somebody, or you picked it up from a buddy that says, "Oh, you got to put your properties in LLCs," and they did it partially correct.
Yeah.
But I
and
can
then-
already tell you that title or whatever else is going on is probably not protected the way it should be.
Right, and then that's another issue. I mean, CPAs, a lot of CPAs, God bless them, will set up those. Will file the Secretary of State documents
To make $100.
to make $100. and you end up thinking like,
And there
why
it
are
is.
you doing this?
Right.
I mean, are you really, you know, are you really making that much money? It just doesn't make sense. I don't give tax advice
Right.
on a consistent basis other than estate and trust issues. I mean, I don't tell businesses what to deduct, what not to deduct. I'm not a CPA. I am a CPA.
And
But
I give
I
soft
don't-
advice when it comes to title stuff.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I don't feel comfortable acting like a specialist is something that I'm not.
Well, we can't,
Right.
obviously, because we
I
are governed
can-
by laws and we have
Right.
licensing
Well, they want to
rules.
ask you friendly questions.
Well, of
You can
course.
help a friend out with your opinions, but at the end of the day, it's like I tell everybody, look, I'm really good at one thing,
Yeah.
But
and that's interest
that's
rates
one
and
thing I
fees
always
and,
tell
and
people.
mortgages. That's it.
You
So
can't start advising anyone on accounting or any legal stuff because it's going to come back and bite us. As you know, licensed realtors, we can only say, you know, the health of the property and the investment that you're getting. This is how you protect it. And then, of course, we need to, you know, reach out to Mario for that.
And what the cool thing is you reach a certain point in your career where you've done enough of it, where you've
Yeah.
been in court enough, where you've done work with the laws enough.
And that's when
Well,
it
you
gets
can-
real, right? And
you
people
can start
think, I
playing.
don't need to deal with it. I only have 1 or 2 or 3 properties, and everything's a hot mess because they own it, like Nick said, with a friend, this one, and the other friend with that one. They went through a divorce. They've been there, done that. But you could still go back and organize the paperwork per se, right?
You fix that. I
fix
love
it.
that mess. You fix that mess up.
You love that mess.
You
It's
love
the
that mess.
worst.
No, because
For
you know,
accounting purposes, I mean, for
the
everything.
more messy the situation, the second marriage, the developer that has property all over the place, the more that they're accessing that creative side of our expertise, the more fun it is for the professional. I'm sure it is. I'm sure Nick. I'll do standard estate plans all day long. It's not a problem. We have a team. We do it very efficiently. We do it very cost effectively. We can prepare an estate plan, that vanilla estate plan, all day long.
Mario, I have another question for one of our Facebook listeners. Francis Zavala, now that I'm finally plugged in. Sorry, I didn't say your names earlier for your questions, but shout out and thank you so much for listening to us and sharing Wednesday with us. Francis Zavala says, I need more info. We have an 8-year-old who we want to protect by making sure she keeps our home when we are no longer here. 8 years old. That's great, right? Because a lot of people seem to think, oh, we're so young. We just bought this. Our kid is, not even grammar school yet or elementary school. Like, what do you do? When do you do this?
I'm without knowing any of the details, this is a kind of a generic answer. First thing you want to do is make sure that they have enough assets available to raise that 8-year-old. So the first thing you do is you look at insurance, life insurance. Okay. The second thing you do is you're going to create a will where you name a guardian for that child.
And that's when it gets really muddy. Because remember when we were at the
no one
other
wants
station,
to talk about
we
this
didn't
stuff.
want to talk about.
We
I didn't want to hear. I was like,
nobody's dying, man.
No one's dying. Well, you're gonna want to name because maybe I'm tainted because I get the back end of it when someone actually does die, and then there's issues. But it doesn't cost that much. Just get a guardian named for that child. It's a will. It's a will that you probably won't use. Just get a simple will. We'll get it name a guardian. And the third thing you want to do is you're gonna want to create. You know what's a mess is when they don't have a will and they don't have these minor guardianships. Is I've seen one parent die, and then the other parent have to ask the court for money because there was no documentation done. So the other parent literally has to go to court every year and ask for money to raise their child. And you don't want to put your spouse through that. It's hard enough to have a spouse die.
And the legal fees.
And the legal fees and the cost.
And
it's exhausting. I mean, it's all work. It's work that was completely unnecessary. It's enough work raising a child on your own. So first, get those assets. Insurance, term insurance is really cheap. I don't sell term insurance.
No,
I don't make a nickel.
I love that you're saying that, Mario, because we'll meet with an insurance agent. It's going to sell us life insurance, and then we'll meet with somebody who's going to insure the property, but no one talks about the estate family, the family planning for our children. I know you're making faces, but what happens if I'm not around?
If you're not around, we're gonna.
Or both if both parents are not around, what is going to happen to the children?
And every situation is different. We go down to depending on the package we do, because we have different packages. We have a more economic package, and then we have a more robust package where we actually lay out step by step what's going to happen. And depending on the resources we're talking about and the person's preferences, we'll go into the package that fits for them. But basically, at the very core, even in the most basic package, we're gonna name guardians for that minor. And we're going to make sure that money for that minor goes in trust and is managed by somebody the family protects.
I'm just going to tell my kids the easy way. I am Lucifer. I will never die.
Really? That's great. And that's why, just be nice to people because you never know who's going to take care of your assets and, more importantly, your children.
My assets are protected. I don't have any.
Then that asset, what we would do.
I'm a ghost. I don't have a thing. I don't have a thing.
Ghost.
These aren't even my headphones.
What we would end up doing with somebody like that is end up doing a will or a simple trust, and then we would end up doing a transfer on death instrument, which is like a deed, but it's a beneficiary designation instead.
Love it. Great information, Mario. Are you done? Did you?
This is one of those shows where I'm going to say it over and over again. I don't want to sound cliche and constantly pump guests because that's not what we do. We're an educational format here. But at the end of the day, my advice is to call someone like Mario if you have questions, because I feel uncomfortable when I leave. And again, I think me and Karla are pretty well versed across the map with a lot of things. But when I leave and I have to sit there and scratch my head and go, Jesus, I might need to take care of my own stuff right now.
It's a reminder,
tells
holy
me,
crap.
That tells me that 99% of the people watching.
Well,
the truth is that tells me that 99% of the people watching probably need to make that phone call.
Yeah.
Well, it's not even that. It's we're service providers. At the end of the day, we're here to cater for our clients. So we're in the busy day to day, and we talk about other people who are 9 to 5, and they never have time to actually think about their own finances, their own personal assets. Of course, we have people in the business who are flipping and rehabbing, or developers. They may have talked to an attorney here and there who said, "Listen,
they're all over the place. You see some of them have their personal names on this property.
At closing, an attorney's going to say,
it's a mess.
Call me, and we're going to set it up as an LLC, S corp or whatever, right?
You're not going to do it as an S corp.
Right, you're not going to do it as a, but I'm saying, like, if you're in the biz, you're already, but for our people who are watching us on Facebook or listening to us here, they're not even thinking about this. So we want to incite some sort of like interest in letting you know that there's never any late time to do this. There's never any, man, I should have done this before. You should do it now, actually.
It sounds like it's almost all fixable. Even if you did it wrong, Mario can fix it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's never too late, which is the beautiful part. It's not like, oh, I totally titled this thing wrong, now I'm screwed. No, you can actually contact Mario and he can undo it.
Right. You know what? I could do I have a self-assessment toolkit that I can put on the Facebook page.
Free?
Free.
We like free.
Free. Do you like free?
I love
yeah,
free.
we're cool with it.
This
Actually,
is the Susie Orman thing. You know, it's like, oh, we got
Karla,
all these papers. What?
We'll let you post it for $10.99 a month.
Oh my God! Stop
You
calling me
need to
like
learn
that.
how to make money.
Stop it! I'm giving.
All right,
people
I'll post
stuff
it on
that
my
they
website
needed.
for free. That's a
See?
gift.
There you go. See, you love how there's a loophole. He's always
You
creating.
already missed the shot, Karla. It's all right.
Whatever,
We can
Nick.
post
I
it
don't
for free.
need
Thanks for posting.
$29.99.
No, I wasn't gonna.
for
I'm not gonna charge you
my
guys.
friends
I'm not
and
gonna charge you.
listeners to actually get some information. This is great. I mean, I have a lot of friends, right? Mommies, hockey. Hockey moms and families who
Hockey
I
moms
want
are
to give
nuts.
this to them.
You're a hockey mom now?
Yes. Your wife is one too.
I know.
Hey, Gail. Shout out to Gail Sir. Anyway, but yes, I mean, this is great for families who are thinking we're too busy to even sit down. And a lot of families don't want to sit down and have this conversation.
Oh, I get it.
Right? I
get
mean,
it.
you're in our circle of
Dude,
friends.
I get
All of
it,
us
man.
run
Who
around
wants to talk-
crazy with the kids here and there. So
That's
when do
why
we stop?
We do it. We purposefully try to get it done within 4 to 6 weeks. We
Wow.
create a timeline. We really pound through it, even complicated ones. We can try to do a shorter one for other families, but we really try to get that done within the 4 to 6 week period. We lay out all the dates because of that reason. I'm like, the clients are like, well, I want to, I'm like, listen, trust me, I do this for a living. You don't want to think about this for more than 6 weeks.
Love it. Love it. Mario, when we were working on the show, you had talked about no cash flow, no. What were you referring to
Before the
that?
show, we're talking about, what are the real risks as an investor or buying something? And we were just talking about common sense stuff. We're talking about that common sense stuff of, making good decisions. The first level of decision, and that Nick and Karla will help you with this one, is the property a good fit for you? Can you really afford it? Like these ratios that the lenders make up, they're there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They're not making those up and pulling them out of thin air. They're in the business of giving loans. If they tell you no, that you can't afford a price point, you really got to take a deep look at yourself and say, maybe the answer's no.
Leave it
you
to
can't
Mario to come
afford
in
it.
here and pull people's ears and say, no, if it's not within budget, you can't afford it and you're not buying it.
I mean, Nick,
Yeah, we're
right?
getting
Am
that a
I
lot.
right? These ratios are there for a reason?
They are, and people don't want to understand that sometimes.
And it's okay. I don't, it's not a dream killer. It's like, listen, you got to start making a new series of decisions.
Right.
You've got to start doing things a little differently. You got to make it an adjustment.
Be a little bit more conservative, right? Just
It's not about conservative. I think be more aggressive. I actually think the opposite of that.
Really?
Go after that dream. If your job, you're only making so much, give more value. If you're not making enough, there's a reason that what you're doing isn't providing enough value in the world. Shift it up. Provide more value.
Love it. PSA, especially now that everybody's getting these tax bills and they're seeing these tax increases, especially in
Get
Cook
that.
County. You want to stay cognizant of your monthly payment, not just like the big overall, you're approved for $400. It's more of like, what is your monthly carrying cost? What do you feel comfortable carrying? Lots of great information, of course, to protect your asset because we're here to elevate your real estate IQ. But of course, this is about everything. This is about family and just, first-time buyers or newlyweds or someone who's just buying and hasn't even been married yet. You want to learn how to hold title so that you can protect it.
Yep.
Any last words of wisdom, Mr. Memeti, before we wrap up?
This is one of those topics you should just go straight to an attorney. Quit asking your buddies. This is not something you should just get soft advice from friends and family. You should just really go to a specialist on this.
Mario, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I know you're super busy.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Karla. Thank you, Nick, for having me on the show.
Thanks as always.
I invite everybody to see CorreaLaw.com because I'm going to share that toolkit. I'll also give
Love
you a
it.
link so you can share it as
For
well.
free.
For free.
Free 99.
Free 99.
If you want the kit, which comes with
I'm going to put it in the kit. I'm going to do a self-evaluation toolkit, and I'm going to design it where you can see if an LLC is a good fit for you, if an estate plan, if doing a will is a good fit for you, and I'll put you through a series of questions where you can rank yourself.
Mario, we need a phone number to you because we have somebody that's actually asking for it.
All right. My number is 773-489-8500. Once
Love
again, get your pen out, 773-489-8500. You can see I've done radio before, right?
Love it, love it. No, we'll actually post it on there as well. And if you have any more questions or you want to get your hands on that kit, you can always email us at info@marketoverdrive.com. And of course, if you're on Facebook, you can also inbox us and one of us will reply. Hopefully it's not Nick because he's too busy. And you got to go back and do all your bills.
Nope. I got bills to pay today for all the assets that I don't own.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Mario.
Hey,
and
thank you,
close
Thanks,
out.
Mario. That is it. You want to catch this show or any other show, you can obviously go to our YouTube channel at Market Overdrive, Facebook/Market Overdrive, website, marketoverdrive.com. And last but not least, we are here with the WGN Network for a reason because we're on their podcast, which is another way you can go to iTunes and download and subscribe to us on podcasting. Get it every morning. I think it's every Monday morning it comes out, even though the show runs every Wednesday at 10 a.m. right back here on our Facebook Live feed. Once again, thanks to our guest, Mario Correa. Good to have you again, even though I'm going to leave absolutely confused.
You're always confused.
That is Karla, Mina. I am Nick Memeti. We will see you next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Thanks.